Good morning. This is Senior Atmospheric Scientist Andrew Pritchard with your Canadian Prairie weather story brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. I've got some new material for you. This is not a repeat video, but as I put together this video for you this morning, I felt like I was producing the exact same video that I gave you last week and probably the week before. We've got rounds of light snow to talk about. We have another shot of extreme cold on the way in the next week or two. And then I want to talk just a little bit about where this whole pattern might be going as we head into the end of January, the beginning of February. We'll start off with the atmospheric, big picture, looking at the infrared satellite picture, taking a look at the flow of the jet stream. Again, very fast flow here, kind of across the southeastern U.S. We've kind of had this high over low look here across the Pacific with kind of a real lack of momentum in the jet stream with a whole lot of cold air just kind of being brought down here by that recent, deep trough across the region that had flow coming out of the north across the Arctic, down toward the Canadian Prairie, and then eventually down into the central U.S. That helped kick off that historic snowstorm that we had across the Gulf Coast, snow all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico there with temperatures, almost in the single digits Fahrenheit there, probably around -5 to -10 on the Celsius side. Now we're looking at the radar here on Thursday morning. Again, apologize, I'm coming to you a day later than I typically would. I was on the road yesterday, so just had to kind of punt the video 24 hours later here. But looking at the radar picture here this morning, a little bit of snow making its way through here. This is not really of any high consequence, but a fresh coating, maybe a few centimeters in some areas where the snow is a little bit heavier here as we head through the next 24 to 36 hours. Looking at temperatures across the region here, Thursday morning, again, the real extreme cold is making its way off to the east as we head through the rest of the week with temperatures starting to kind of moderate across the region from west to east. We got temperatures that are even above freezing as you make your way further north into the Peace River region. Grand Prairie, Edmonton getting close to the freezing mark here. Calgary, you'll probably get close to the freezing mark, if not a few degrees above as we head through the day today as well. And those temperatures, generally, we're going to see a bit of a mild trend over the next 4 to 5 days. That next shot of cold air looming kind of in the week 2 time frame, but again, just some light flurries, some light snow. This is all that we've really had to talk about over the last couple of weeks, and there's not much more to talk about other than that over the next few days as well. This is your day on Thursday. This is your Thursday evening, Thursday night, and now Friday morning. Those snow flurries now moving out of Alberta into Saskatchewan, parts of southern Manitoba. This is your day on Friday. The light snow continues across the region, perhaps blustery at times. So locally, this could be troubling, not in the form of significant accumulations, but in the form of that classic Canadian Prairie blowing snow that you all love to do up there. So that could be a thing over the next couple of days, but then high pressure moves in Saturday and Sunday, pretty quiet across the region other than maybe some snow flurries late in the day on Sunday in the far east, parts of southern and southeastern Manitoba. Otherwise, not a lot of significant snow to talk about across the region over the next couple of days. So here's the pattern right now. Again, the big trough that's kind of making its way through the central and eastern U.S., bringing in the northerly flow, all the cold air on the back side of that. Here's the big ridge that continues to kind of persist and ebb and flow across the Gulf of Alaska that continues to really rob momentum from the jet stream across this region. So instead of seeing big storm systems, a lot of flow in the jet stream kind of racing in here, this would be something that would give us more in the way of chances for big corridors of snow accumulating across the prairie. We continue to not see that, and we see the flow being forced up over the top of the ridge. This gives us, we're tapping into the Arctic, so we get these shots of cold air that come in, but this is not a good source region for significant snow when these storm systems are, again, coming out of the northwest, dropping across the prairie like that instead of lifting across the prairie. So we'll just kind of animate this, where the whole pattern going. I see some changes to it. It kind of, is evolving in some ways, but as it evolves over the next 2 weeks, there's not a whole lot of change in it. You're seeing this ridge continue to kind of develop and ebb and flow in some form in this area. You're seeing troughs at times developing across this region. We see another big one that drops in here at the end of January into early February, but overall, the flow continues to kind of fall back into something like this. So here's the next 5 days. Again, this is the trajectory there. So our source region, the momentum of the jet stream going over the top of the ridge in the Gulf of Alaska, bringing us, cold, dry air. Here's days 5 through 10. So this is kind of the last few days of January, getting us into the first day of February. We're looking for an area of low pressure that's going to kind of drop down into the southwestern U.S. It's going to give us some heavy precipitation across the Gulf Coast down here as we kind of tap into the Gulf. But this is not developing a big trough across this region and tapping into the Gulf of Mexico in a big way that's going to draw moisture northward, giving us a heavy corridor of snow up here. This is still the main branch of of the jet stream, the polar branch, is still way up here, kind of coming across the prairie in this, not zonal, more kind of northwest to southeast flow, with the more significant troughing being off to the east across the North Atlantic, and across, maritime Canada. So we're getting these little systems that are just kind of pinwheeling around the base of the upper level low off to the east. We're really kind of just continuing to see the bigger trough across the Pacific, kind of wobbling around and being kind of the bigger players. So overall, the flow across the prairie still very much northwest to southeast, still not tapping into the Gulf of Mexico in any sort of meaningful way, north of the immediate Gulf Coast. Then we get into days 10 to 15. This is the first week of February. We're kind of right back. This is a pretty loud signal for a model that far out, getting into days 10 to 15, February 2nd through the 7th, back with the big ridge, kind of this time centered over the Aleutian Islands, just a little bit west of the Gulf of Alaska. And what that does is we allow a big trough to dive in here. Is it's kind of the same setup as what we just saw a week ago, but several hundred miles off to the west. So now we're talking about a big deliverance of Arctic air across the Canadian prairie, potentially down into the parts of the Pacific Northwest, and on down the Rockies, whereas it just was kind of delivering it in this region as we go back to last week. So it's kind of the same thing, the same result. Temperatures moderate across the region, but here you go. So you go into the end of January, the beginning of February, there's that big shot of cold air that just comes working its way down the Rockies. So let's take a look at it. We're moderating, seeing more in the way of mild temperatures here, with this big ridge across the region as we head through the last week of January. So still January, still going to be, cooler out there, but above normal for the last week of January. And then it's the very end of January into early February, we're starting to see the models go hard after another big drop of Arctic air, this time potentially across the, Western Canada and the Western United States, or something like that. But this is just something to watch. The pattern kind of reverting back to this same look. But the bigger picture, the bigger idea is, are we going to get any heavy snow in the near term? No, I don't have anything to really point at. You've got shots of light snow that make their way over the top of that ridge and kind of drop down into the prairie. You can see a couple events here. There's something we maybe need to watch for late January that I'll show you on the European deterministic model. But in general, the Gulf moisture, the heavier precipitation is confined to the southern U.S. We're dry for the most part across the western U.S., other than a couple little hits of moisture that come in here over the next 2 weeks. And then across the prairie, we're just getting, light doses of snow across the region. So just kind of looking at this, where's this whole thing going? As I look at what the models are showing right now, kind of where we're starting, again, here's the big ridge that continues to rob momentum from the Pacific here as it makes its way into Western North America. So the flow of the jet stream, all of the energy going up over the top of the ridge, down around this persistent area of low pressure off to our east. So here's the flow. Let's go ahead and take a look at the actual wind speeds here with this. So this is the height anomalies, and then here's the actual flow. So where do you see high winds in the jet stream? It's here across the West Pacific, and then it's here across the eastern U.S. and the northern Atlantic. Here we've got this disruptive high that's really robbing the momentum for the jet stream, again, sending it up over the top of that, but really disrupting things. So we don't get a big feed of Pacific winds. We don't get something that would really shake up the pattern here. Instead, the flow is off to the west and the flow is off to the east. So as this evolves over the next 2 weeks, we see some changes here. Just kind of let it play. Again, we're kind of focused on this region right here. Here's the Canadian prairie. Go ahead and highlight that for you. So here's what happens. We'll go ahead and run it back to present day. Again, big ridge right here, trough over to the east. Let's go ahead and walk this forward to the end of January. And here is where the big ridge comes in, allowing temperatures to moderate across the region. This kind of big high over low look you see right there. Again, this is not a pattern that is allowing the bigger picture to evolve across the region. These big, highly amplified blocking patterns. And so what happens then, we get this strong flow coming across the West Pacific. We're going to kind of blow another bubble here and get this ridge to expand across the Aleutian Islands. You see the high over low look once again across the Pacific. This shuts down flow, really disrupts it. We get this big area of low pressure that's going to be dropping down across the western coast of North America, kind of along the Pacific coast there, bringing another shot of cold air to the prairie, but kind of just keeping this same highly amplified look with the anomalous ridge of high pressure over Alaska, and then the flow coming down around it, doing something like this. So there's some indication here that this could give us a burst of flow, that brings some precipitation and some activity to the storm track across the southern U.S. But this is not one that really gets me excited about, meaningful storm systems running through the Canadian Prairie. This is not a, big trough across this region right here with fast flow coming around the base of it, coming in, from the Pacific. This is what we saw kind of coming out of the winter into the early spring in 2023, and that we saw in 2024. This is a very look here, even though we kind of get this pseudo look with a big trough in the west and that southeastern U.S. ridge is, sometimes a look that we would be craving for an active storm track. But I think this is kind of a false signal there. And the bigger story really is the reinforcing ridge, or the returning ridge, the persisting ridge over Alaska, and the troughing here over the eastern U.S., over eastern North America and the North Atlantic. So your features just continue to kind of fall into a pattern like that, which delivers cold air to the prairie and light doses of snow. Again, so what's the difference? Here's the pattern right now. A lot of flow over Asia coming over to the Western Pacific, a lot of flow over the North Atlantic and Eastern North America, with a lack of momentum here across the Pacific. We let this thing kind of just play out, and we fall right back to the same spot. So this is what it looks like here, February 6th. Same look. The flow is to our west. The flow is to our east. All of the flow, in our immediate area is being forced up over the top of the big ridge over Alaska as we get into early February. So the pattern moves around, it wobbles a little bit, but I don't see a whole lot of change. So if I were to give you a theme for the next 2 weeks, it's going to be returning, Arctic air masses here, or kind of that every, week or two, slipping into a period of extreme cold, but without a lot in the way of meaningful snow across the region. So I'm going to finish with the deterministic run here. The snow and rain forecast, the precipitation type forecast is the word that I'm really looking for. And that shows the snow making its way through over the next 24 to 48 hours. Again, little disturbances kind of continue to be just funneled between the ridge and the trough off to our east. The east, the trough to the east, the ridge to the west. So here you go. We're pretty quiet over the weekend. We see that ridge making its way a little bit further to the east. And then it's as we get into the very end of January, early February, you see a couple systems running through the region. A lot of this is north of the prairie, kind of north of Highway 16, where we might stack up some snow. Another one that comes in here February 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. This is way out there, so we'll see what this really looks like. But again, you're seeing a pretty, the lines here are pretty tightly packed. The isobars, that shows a pretty good pressure difference. It's a really amplified pattern, but the storm track is not one that delivers high snow totals to the region. So this looks fairly high impact here the first couple of days of February, but what this would really be is really strong winds with some light snow. So you could certainly get some blizzard conditions out of this with heavier snowfall rates temporarily and some high winds. I'm spending a lot of time trying to kind of split hairs, but I just want to explain why this looks highly impactful, but it would not deliver much in the way of actual snowfall to the region. It's just going to be a highly amplified pattern, but highly amplified in a way that's cold and dry across the prairie. So here's your total snowfall forecast then over the next 10 to 14 days. And take a look at this, just playing out to the last week of January. You see some snow here. This is January 26th. This will be January 27th through the 28th. Here you go. This is what I was talking about, stacking it up north of the prairie at times. And then here comes the system the first couple of days of February with those high winds. But look how much snow really stacks up. Through February 5th, we're talking about, in the 3 to 6 centimeter range, even with, that highly amplified pattern. Then again, it's highly amplified, but it's amplified for cold. It is not amplified for precipitation across the region. So here's the probability of 6 inches or more of snow accumulating from the European ensemble over the next 2 weeks. So all the way through February 6th. Where do you see snow? It's where we have the fast flow, and that's going to be up here off to the east. At times, some flow coming up over the top of the ridge, delivering some snow to areas off to our west as well. A couple of runs of systems north of Highway 16. It's just not one that is going to cash in here from the prairie down across a lot of the northern plains and the upper Midwest of the U.S. either. We'll finish with a look at those temperatures. Again, a warming trend as we head into the weekend and early next week. pretty good evidence we're going to be slipping down into another run of extreme cold as we get to the beginning of February. So just, get excited for that. Edmonton, here's a look again above freezing for the highs over the weekend. Back down pretty darn cold as we get into the first few days of February. Saskatoon, the same look. Really, it's going to be a pretty mild finish to the weekend and start to next week with the the shot of extreme cold looming after next weekend, kind of in days 8, 9, and 10. Have a wonderful week. I will talk to you again next Wednesday, January 29th. I won't be traveling and speaking that day, so we'll go as regularly scheduled.